So it's just after 10, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Thank you again for joining us today. Last week we had Eric's ordination service, which was quite a bit different than our normal service. So to those of you who made it in person or via Zoom, thank you. That was a really special day. So thanks for coming here today. Just a reminder to keep your mics muted throughout the service today. For those of you who are new here to Psanctuary, welcome. Thanks for being here. Every Sunday, we open up our service to the public, our worldwide community, and we gather for 30 minutes of readings, journaling, and meditation, followed by a discussion led by Eric. We don't partake in the sacrament during these Sunday services, but we are excited to be offering group sacrament services starting in October. So if you're interested in that, you can inquire with us at info@psanctuary.org. Please do consider donating to Psanctuary. Donations keep us going. And also, we have a pretty big vision for Psanctuary in our community, which includes owning a property for gathering and community events, permaculture and mushroom cultivation, a school for the children in our community, which you don't ever see here on Zoom, but there's quite a few of them, and greater and more affordable access to sacrament services. So without further ado, please get comfortable. If you don't have a journal with you and you'd like to participate in journaling, now is a good time to grab a journal. And I will pass things on to lovely Athena. Thanks.
Thanks, Courtney. And again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our Psanctuary community and celebration. Every Sunday is a celebration when we're able to come together. So I just really thank you everyone for being here. As we begin our statement of faith, we recognize that this statement does not exhaust the full extent of our faith. We believe that sacred mushrooms are the primary source of personal and divine revelation. We seek counsel from the mushroom to find direction and inspiration in our faith practice. And we believe that all individuals who seek true revelation from divinity can do so. If you're joining us on your phone, we do have slides up where you can read along with us the service. You just want to swipe left to do that. And we will begin our service as we do each of our services to really settle into the space with a 5-minute meditation, really thinking about those intentions that brought you here today, thinking about our community and our vision for what we hope Psanctuary to be in the future. And we'll begin that time now. And I invite you to take a nice deep breath and exhale. And just really find your body and find yourself in this space today. I invite you to take another deep inhale and exhale into the space. And we will begin our first reading with the help from Rushian. Oh, sorry, Tristan first.
Chapter 20, Serving God. I have brought you thus far through the 2 preceding chapters with a view to finally settling the question of duty. This is one that puzzles and perplexes very many people who are earnest and sincere, and gives them a great deal of difficulty in its solution. When they start out to make something of themselves and to practice the science of being great, they find themselves necessarily compelled to rearrange many of their relationships. There are friends who perhaps must be alienated. There are relatives who misunderstand and who feel that they are in some way being slighted. The really great person is often considered selfish by a large circle of people who are connected with them and who feel that they might bestow upon them more benefits than they do. The question at the outset is it my duty to make the most of myself regardless of everything else, or shall I wait until I can do so without any friction or without causing loss to anyone? This is the question of duty to self versus duty to others. One's duty to the world has been thoroughly discussed in the preceding pages, and I give some consideration now to the idea of duty to God. An immense number of people have a great deal of uncertainty, not to say anxiety, as to what they ought to do for God. The amount of work and service that is done for God in these United States in the way of church work and so on is enormous. An immense amount of human energy is expended in what is called serving God. I propose to consider briefly what serving God is and how a man may serve God best, and I think I shall be able to make plain that the conventional idea as to what constitutes service to God is all wrong. When Moses went down into Egypt to bring out the Hebrews from bondage, his demand upon Pharaoh in the name of the deity was, "Let the people go, that they may serve me." God led them out into the wilderness and there instituted a new form of worship, which has led many people to suppose that worship constitutes the service of God. Although later, God distinctly declared that God cared nothing for ceremonies, burned offerings, or obligation or ablution, and the teaching of Jesus is rightly understood, would do away with organized temple worship altogether. God does not lack anything that people may do for God with their hands or bodies or voices. St. Paul points out that people can do nothing for God does not need anything. The view of evolution that we have taken shows God seeking expression through people. Through all the successive ages in which God's Spirit has urged people of the height, God has gone on seeking expression. Every generation of people is more godlike than the preceding generation. Every generation of people demands more in the way of fine homes, pleasant surroundings, congenial work, rest, travel, and opportunity for study than the preceding generation. I have heard some short-sighted economists argue that the working people of today ought surely to be fully contented because their condition is so much better than that of the working man 200 years ago, who slept in a windowless hut on a floor covered with rushes in company with his pigs. If that man had all that he was able to use for the living of all the life he knew how to live, he was perfectly content. And if he had lack, he was not contented. The man of today has a comfortable home and very many things, indeed, that were unknown a short period back in the past. And if he has all that he can use for the living of all the life he can imagine, he will be content. But he is not content. God has lifted the race so far that many common men can picture a better and more desirable life than he is able to live under existing conditions. And so long as this is true, so long as a man can think and clearly picture to himself a more desirable life, he will be discontented with the life he has to live, and rightly so. That discontent is the Spirit of God urging men on to more desirable conditions. It is God who seeks expression in the race. He works in us to will and to do. The only service you can render God is to give expression to what God is trying to give the world through you. The only service you can render God is to make the very most of yourself in order that God may live in you to the utmost of your possibilities. In a formal work of this series, The Science of Getting Rich, I refer to the little boy at the piano, the music in whose soul could not find expression through his untrained hands. This is a good illustration of the way the Spirit of God is over, about, around, and in all of us, seeking to do great things with us. So soon as we will train our hands and feet, our minds, brains, and bodies to do God's service. Your first duty to God, to yourself, and to the world is to make yourself as great a personality in every way as you possibly can. And that, it seems to me, disposes of the question of duty. There are one or two other things that might be disposed of in closing this chapter. I have written of opportunity in the preceding chapter. I have said, in a general way, that it is within the power of every person to become great. Just as in The Science of Getting Rich, I declared that it is within the power of every person to become rich. But these sweeping generalizations need qualifying. There are people who have such materialistic minds that they are absolutely incapable of comprehending the philosophy set forth in these books. There is a great mass of men and women who have lived and worked until they are practically incapable of thought along these lines, and they cannot receive the message. Something may be done for them by demonstration, that is, by living the life before them. But that is the only way they can be aroused. The world needs demonstration more than it needs teaching. For this mass of people, our duty is to become as great in personality as possible in order that they may see and desire to do likewise. It is our duty to make ourselves great for their sakes, so that we may help prepare the world that the next generation shall have better conditions for thought. One other point. I am frequently written to by people who wish to make something of themselves and to move out into the world, but who are hampered by home ties, having others more or less dependent upon them, whom they fear would suffer if left alone. In general, I advise such people to move out fearlessly and to make the most of themselves. If there is a loss at home, it will only be temporary and apparent. For in a little while, if you follow the leading of Spirit, you will be able to take better care of your dependents than you ever have done before.
Thank you, Tristan. Okay, this is our litany of gratitude poem that we read every Sunday. If you would like to, I invite you to unmute your mic. When I say the verse, we live in all things live in us. So I'll give you a moment to unmute your mic if you would like to, and then I will begin. We live by the sun, we feel by the moon, we move by the stars. We live in all things live in us. We eat from the earth, we drink from the rain, we breathe of the air. We live in all things live in us. We call to each other, we listen to each other, our hearts deepen with love and compassion. We live in all things live in us. We depend on the trees and animals, we depend on the earth, our minds open with wisdom and insight. We live in all things live in us. We dedicate our practice to others. We include all forms of life. We celebrate the joy of living and dying. We live in all things live in us. We are full of life. We are full of death. We are grateful for all beings and companions. Thank you. You can mute your mics back now. And now I invite Ruxian to read the Tao Te Ching.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. Greetings. I'm now going to read from the Tao Te Ching, chapter 20. Have done with learning, and you will have no more vexation. How great is the difference between e and o? What is the distinction between good and evil? Must I fear what others fear? What abysmal nonsense this is. All men are joyous and beaming, as though feasting upon a sacrificial ox, as though mounting the spring terrace. I alone am placid and give no sign. Like a babe which has not yet smiled, I alone am forlorn as one who has no home to return to. All men have enough and to spare. I alone appear to possess nothing. What a fool I am, what a muddled mind I have. All men are bright, bright. I alone am dim, dim. All men are sharp, sharp. I alone am mum, mum. Bland like the ocean, aimless like the, what's this? Wafting gale. All men settle down in their grooves. I alone am stubborn and remain outside. But wherein I am most different from others is in knowing to take sustenance from my mother. I believe that is it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. So we will now begin a moment of reflection. So if you have your journal nearby, or if you'd like to just take this time to be in yourself and reflect on our readings today, we do have a couple journal prompts to help you get started. How can these readings be viewed through the lens of the sacred mushroom? How can these readings be applied to everyday life? And we'll take 5 minutes during this time of reflection. right. If you'd like to round out your thoughts and come back to the space, we will close out our service for today in recognition that we've come together with intentions of service to the land and all its inhabitants. It is in our hearts to go forth into the world with the collective consciousness. We encourage you to stay for continued conversation and fellowship around our readings today. And for those unable to stay, thank you for joining us.